If you've been budgeting, cutting back, tracking every dollar, and still feel like your finances are getting worse, this video is for you. Because for millions of people right now, budgeting feels useless. Not because they're irresponsible, not because they lack discipline, not because they ignored good advice, but because budgeting was designed for a financial system that no longer exists. And today, I want to explain why it feels so ineffective, what actually changed beneath the surface, and what still works in today's economy. Without guilt, panic, or unrealistic promises. For decades, personal finance followed a relatively stable promise. If money felt tight, the solution was consistent and familiar. Make a budget, track your spending, cut unnecessary expenses, stay disciplined. This advice wasn't wrong. And for a long time, it worked. People weren't getting rich overnight, but they could stabilize their finances, build emergency savings, pay down debt, and feel a sense of control over their money. So when budgeting stops working, the natural reaction is self-blame. People assume they're not trying hard enough, not organized enough, not disciplined enough, not committed enough. But what if the problem isn't effort? What if it isn't budgeting itself? What if the environment budgeting was built for simply no longer exists? Budgeting was never designed to fight structural pressure. At its core, budgeting is a behavioral tool. It helps people identify waste, smooth cash flow, and align spending with priorities. It works best when three conditions exist. First, income rises slowly but consistently over time. Second, essential expenses remain relatively stable. Third, discretionary spending represents a meaningful portion of total spending. When these conditions are present, budgeting is powerful. Small improvements compound. Planning reduces stress. Temporary setbacks are recoverable. Trade-offs feel manageable. Budgeting works when people have room to maneuver. But for many households today, that room has narrowed or disappeared entirely. The biggest change isn't that people forgot how to budget. The change is what people are budgeting around. Today, the largest household expenses are largely fixed. Housing, healthcare, insurance, transportation, utilities, food. These are not flexible costs in the way older advice assumes. You can't negotiate rent every month. You can't opt out of insurance increases. You can't meaningfully spreadsheet your way out of higher grocery prices without sacrificing time, quality, or health. So when prices rise faster than wages, budgeting doesn't restore control. It simply makes the pressure more visible. That's why so many people say, "I know exactly where my money goes." And it still isn't enough. That feeling is not incompetence. It's what happens when financial margins compress. This leads to a second problem that rarely gets discussed: the psychological cost. When budgeting stops producing results, it stops feeling like a tool and starts feeling like a judgment. Every purchase feels questionable. Every unexpected expense feels like failure. Every month ends with frustration instead of clarity. People begin to internalize outcomes they do not control. They assume the problem must be personal, when the reality is largely structural. This is where traditional advice quietly breaks down. Precision cannot solve a shrinking margin. Trying to optimize an already constrained budget often increases stress without improving stability. In other words, budgeting starts demanding more emotional effort while delivering fewer tangible results. There's also an uncomfortable reality most advice avoids. Most people have already cut back. They eat out less. They delay purchases. They cancel subscriptions. They drive older vehicles. They skip vacations. They postpone upgrades. So when advice says, just cut back more, it ignores the fact that many households are already operating near their minimum viable lifestyle. At a certain point, cutting expenses stops improving finances and starts reducing quality of life, without solving the underlying issue. Budgeting assumes there is excess to trim. For many people, there isn't. And that fundamentally changes what actually matters. Another subtle shift is time pressure. Cutting costs today often requires more time, not less. Driving farther for cheaper groceries, repairing instead of replacing, comparing every purchase, managing multiple accounts and bills. Time itself becomes a hidden cost. Budgeting used to trade convenience for savings. Now it often trades time, energy, and stress, with diminishing returns. That trade-off matters, especially for working adults. So if traditional budgeting feels ineffective, what still works? Not hacks, not shortcuts, and not pretending discipline alone can overcome structural pressure. What works today comes down to 3 principles. First, income protection and stability. This doesn't mean constant hustling or burnout. It means protecting your primary income stream, reducing unnecessary risk, and improving earning power gradually when possible. Stability matters more than optimization. Second, fixed cost decisions matter more than variable ones. One decision about housing, transportation, or insurance can outweigh hundreds of small spending decisions. This is why obsessing over coffee or small purchases often misses the point. Big decisions shape long-term outcomes. Third, liquidity matters more than perfection. Cash flexibility reduces stress more effectively than a flawless budget ever will. Liquidity creates options. Options create resilience. And resilience matters more than control in uncertain environments. Budgeting still has value, but its role has changed. It works best as a supporting tool for awareness, planning, and short-term organization, not as the foundation of financial stability. Expecting budgeting alone to solve modern financial pressure places an unrealistic burden on individuals. Reframing this matters because it removes unnecessary guilt. Success today does not look like perfection. It looks like avoiding financial traps, preserving flexibility, reducing long-term risk, and making fewer irreversible mistakes. That isn't failure. That's adaptation. If budgeting feels useless right now, it doesn't mean you're irresponsible. It means the rules changed, and much of the advice never updated. This channel exists to explain those changes clearly, so you can make better decisions, set realistic expectations, and stop blaming yourself for problems you didn't create.